When learning animation, the most common exercise to start out with is the bouncing ball. The problem is, if you blindly follow the guidance of many books and tutorials, everything will turn into an identical squashy rubber ball. We know that a bowling ball doesn't move this way. So what makes it different, and how do we capture that in animation? In this lesson, we're going to study the way things move in the real world so that we have a solid grounding for our animation. The goal isn't to robotically replicate reality, but once we understand the way that things move, we can apply exaggeration and caricature to achieve a believable and appealing end result. Hello, I'm John Knowles, and this lesson is part of my Intermotion course, which teaches the foundations of character animation within Blender. The entire course will be available for free on YouTube, and if you'd like to make use of the demo files and rigs as you follow along, they're also available for free using the link in the description. If you're ever unsure of how something moves, the best place to start is always by gathering reference. You can observe things in life, film them for yourself, or study them online. Whether you're animating a bee or a bouncing ball, studying the way that real things move can be extremely helpful. Thinking about that question of why a bowling ball bounces differently to a tennis ball, I've seen many tutorials which state that a heavy ball falls faster than a light one, and then doesn't bounce as high because of its weight. But is that really true? I'm no physicist, but what I can tell you is that all objects will fall with the same acceleration regardless of mass. What will make a difference is air resistance, but when it comes to different balls, the effect of that will be negligible. To test this, I have 3 different balls and a tangerine. The table tennis ball is the lightest at just 3 grams, and the tangerine is the heaviest at 80 grams. Filming these in slow motion, falling from the same height, we can clearly see that they all hit the ground at the same time, despite the tangerine being well over 20 times heavier than the table tennis ball. So I think we can safely ignore the myth that heavier balls fall faster. But what's really interesting to see is what happens next. All of the objects bounce very differently, and clearly size isn't a factor, since the smallest and largest balls are the ones with the highest bounces. Since all of these objects were filmed under identical conditions, the difference in the bounces must be a result of the materials that they're made of. Once again, I'm definitely not a physicist, but what I can tell you is that the height of the bounces will be dependent on the amount of energy that is transferred back into upwards motion rather than being lost through things like heat or sound. At this point, the mass of the object will have more of an impact, since the upwards force needs to overcome the weight of the object for it to leave the ground. It's not as simple as the heaviest objects bounce less though. If it were, the tennis ball should not bounce higher than the hard plastic ball. This is where the elasticity of the different materials will play a significant part in the energy transfer. So, before everything becomes too technical, I want to make it very clear that we don't need to film everything in slow motion or study physics in order to create believable animation. The key is simply to observe what we're planning to animate rather than guessing or believing everything that we hear about how things move. We're then free to apply artistic license to whatever we discover, but we'll be doing so from a place of knowledge, and the result will be far more believable. For example, I've animated this orange to appear far more bouncy than the tangerine in my filmed reference, and that was intentional. It's still not as bouncy as this tennis ball, but I wanted it to have more life and energy than we might see in reality, without it becoming a rubber ball. This is what the principle of exaggeration is all about, starting out from reality and pushing things to achieve a more appealing result. So with all of that said, how should a bowling ball move? This is where you come in. I've created a bowling ball rig and start file for you to work with, which you can download from the course resources. Do some research online and see if you can animate a bowling ball bounce based upon what you discover. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next lesson.